So the dancer thing was like, something happened, I lost all my money, and I was like, I'll just go be a dancer. You know, why not? It'll be fun. We'll dance. That is like 5% of what happens in there. And it's soul sucking. The money is good, but you never see the money. You know, it's just so far removed from what I think God wants for us, you know, and so that comes along with everything. There was abuse, there was drugs, there was alcohol, there was parties, there was just all kinds of things that I now would be like, what the fuck was I doing? You know? So yeah, the money just kept coming. So it's like, it's so hard to get out of that. It took for me to like almost go to prison to say, okay, maybe I'll stop the dancing. My name is Ashley, and I'm originally from Guatemala.
What was the most notable thing about your childhood? Like, what stands out to you?
Really when I got put on a plane at 5 years old to like a third world country, so from West Palm Beach to Guatemala, where I knew no one nor I spoke the language. So my mother is, she has dissociative disorder, so multiple personalities, and she was losing her mind. She was getting a divorce. She had lost her other son, and I was going to be removed. And so she just put me on a plane and sent me to my family. I think that was just the beginning of like a long life of like not feeling wanted, no unconditional love. It's like when the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally kind of like just leaves you. It was a lot. I was just physically ill. Like I had a fever, and I think it just set me up for a long life of like wanting to be good enough and wanting people to like me, or not caring if people liked me, and a lot of mental health conditions stemmed out of that. My mother, though, she had severe alcoholism and substance abuse. And what's actually kind of funny that I didn't find out until I was in AA is that my mom and my dad met in AA, and then they got married, and then they had me. So yeah, there was quite a lot of that. I was destined to be here, you know. I'll never forget, like my dad had like left me at the homeless shelter, and for like months, and then they finally came, and the first day I went into foster care, the girl, I was like 11 or 12, she was like, come on, we're gonna jump out of the window. And by like midnight, we were drunk. We had drank all this ENJ, and like that kind of like set the tone for like the rest of it. Foster care is horrible, and I don't think there's enough awareness about foster care, and I don't think there's enough resources. I don't think there's enough foster parents. That in its own is very traumatic. I suffered all kinds of abuse, from locked fridges to never having my own room to like physically abused, sexually abused, all the abuses. I went through human trafficking. I mean, like, it was just, you have no one. And sometimes even when you did get a good foster parent, you were already so hurt that like you can't even fathom the fact that somebody just wants to help you, you know? And so I was drinking and using probably when I was like 14. My dad, before he dropped me off at the homeless shelter, he dropped me off at a mental institution. And what I learned very quickly was that if you acted out, they put this shot in you, and it took you out. They put you in this padded room and they gave you Jello. So like, I learned that was the first time in my whole entire life that I felt nothing, that my brain was off, that like, I never really chased a high, I chased a numbness. I never chased a drunk, I chased like to turn everything off. And it just controlled my whole entire life for a very long time. So the dancing, that didn't come about till I was like 20. But the human trafficking happened when I was in foster care, and the way they brought me in was they did tattoos. So he was like this sketch out. So when we would run away from the group homes, and we'd go to gas stations. And we would wait. Like, the fact that I am not dead is like insane, but we would just wait for a random person who would pick us up. And generally it was grown men. And we would just go wherever they went. We would drink and like do all those things. And he was like, hey, I do tattoos. And he had a girl with him, like his wife. And she was so nice and so sweet. And then, you know, that's how I got my neck tattoo. Not my neck tattoo, but this tattoo that I have over my whole side. I was like 12 years old, maybe 13. And I was getting tattoos, and I was really excited about it. And one night they were like, we're gonna drink some wine. And they were like, it's really cool. It's made from like crushed animal bones and blood. And like, it's mixed together. And we were like, that's cool. And then we woke up and we were in chains, and there was a sheet, and there was stuff happening to our feet, and there was stuff happening up here, and I was screaming and she was screaming. And then it got to the point where we just kind of gave up. You know, I believe it was maybe like a month. Like, so it wasn't that long, but it felt like a fucking eternity. Like, it was, and it was crazy because it was in an apartment. And like, the help was like right there, but we were so fucking scared. Like, that's why when people are like, oh, if I was to get kidnapped, I would. No, man, that shit, like, it gives me chills because I don't really talk about this, but it was horrifying. And it took for us to be like, we're just risk dying, you know, before we continue to be in this situation, so. I'm getting my tattoo removed with this program from Removery because it was like a stamp. And if you went anywhere, you know, like, they could find you and they could get you. You know, a lot of people think it's unbelievable, and I didn't start talking about this till maybe like 2 or 3 months ago because it was very traumatic.
Was there any point that you remember being happy?
Probably when I had my twins and I was at the hospital and they were all sitting there, and it was like, as selfish as this was, I was really young, it was like I finally had my family. Like, this was my family, and as long as I kept them, you know, that was, they were mine, and they loved me and I loved them, and, you know, they were never going to be hurt. And I just remember that being a moment of like, that is just a moment that was probably the happiest moment of my whole entire life. I was maybe like 20, and I would start drinking, and because I had gotten myself into an industry, I was a dancer for quite some time, and I don't remember, because when I had my children, I was a pescatarian. I was, you know, I breastfed all of them. I wanted to be the perfect mom, and I don't remember where I went from, if you smoked cigarettes around my kids, you couldn't be around them, to full-blown addict and alcoholic. And there was a point where the person who was watching my child said, hey, your daughter's like crying. She misses you. She wants to see you. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't move. As bad as like everything like inside of me wanted to go and hold her and do that, I legitimately physically could not move. And I wanted nothing more than to keep chasing the drink and chasing the drug and chasing the drink. And that's when I knew I was in trouble, and I said I would never do it again. And I didn't stop using till I was 27. So, you know, so I was always definitely allergic to opioids. So, you know, when the fentanyl thing started coming around, which, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. Long story short, I died. I was dead for like 11 minutes. Had I not been at the apartments directly in front of the hospital, had I not been taken, I would be dead. And I continued to use. I was on probation for a DUI, and I continued to use. I continued to drink. I failed every test. I got another DUI, and then I was gonna go to prison. I mean, it was to the point where I was tweaking. Like, my house was a mess. DCF was knocking on the door. The children were fending for themselves. And I knew that I was gonna go to prison. And those last couple of years were just hell, man. Like, it stopped being fun almost quite from the beginning. You know, like, I remember very few times, and maybe it was always fun in the first hour or two. You know, that's when it was fun, the drinking and the shots and the, oh my God, this is so fun, until everybody else has left. Everybody else is going to sleep and I cannot. I'm still going, you know, and I always knew something was off. I just was so afraid that if I told anyone, hey, I have this problem, but I also have children, they would take my children. And that's what I think is so, like, heartbreaking, is that, like, you can get help and keep your children. I was gonna go to prison. I had failed my drug test. My public defender was like, you're gonna do like 5 to 6 years in prison, but you should go do your community service. So I went to a clubhouse and I was doing my community service, and I looked at these women especially, and, you know, it was primarily older white women with very expensive things. And I'm like, there's no way they drink and use the way that I do, and let alone not abuse, but like neglect their children like that. And, you know, at that time when you did community service, if you did a meeting, they gave you extra hours. So I was going to these meetings, and then finally I went to one meeting where this woman shared something about how she felt so much remorse for how she treated her child, you know, how she didn't feed the child, and I just broke down and I was sobbing. And at that point I had nothing else to lose, and I had such a feeling of like relief that I was going to prison, relief that it was over. The constant battle was just over. And you know, I went to these meetings, and I went to the meeting, and then a woman dragged me to another meeting, and I told them, I'm like, I'm going to prison. Like, there's nothing, you know, I'm going to give my children a month of having a sober mom before, you know, I go to prison. But besides that, you know, it's over. And they all surrounded me, and they were like, and like a lot of women surrounded me, and they were like, go home, get on your knees, and like pray. And I'm like, I've been praying. And they're like, no. Just go home and pray. Say, I'm tired. Just give it up. And I was like, okay. So I went home. I would have done anything at that point, because what's the worst that could happen, right? So I did that, and the very next day my public defender called, and she was like, they're going to give you 90 days house arrest. She was like, I don't know how, but that's what's going to happen. Like, it even gives me chills just talking about it now, because it was like God had to smack me in the face, because I did not like God. I did not trust God. I did not. And even till this day now, I have a higher power, you know, which thank God they let you pick your own, because, you know, but after that, man, God had to put me in a corner. I was on house arrest for 90 days. The only thing I could do was go to meetings. I was a late diagnosed, I got ADHD, the ADHD diagnosis. And I think that would have, if someone would have known that earlier in my life, I think that would have helped a lot. But, you know, growing up in foster care, they kind of give you every single diagnosis under the sun so they can like medicate you. And now as an adult, you know, it took, even though I was like in sobriety, it took like me to be borderline suicidal, actually very suicidal, for me to think, okay, I need medical help. I treated my mental illnesses with the alcohol, because the alcohol and the drugs are literally just side effects of mental health and other things. Like, some people don't have that, but for me, that's what it was. And so my mental health didn't change, and I felt like it was supposed to. Like, I'm supposed to be sober. I have a relationship with God, so like that should be enough. And sometimes I think that's kind of pushed to us, that should be enough. But we very clearly have doctors for a reason, and that was something I had to navigate. You know, stress doesn't go away. Life doesn't go away. Bills don't go away. You know, heartbreaks don't go away. Like, you're still living life. It's just a hell of a lot easier, and you tend to remember it the next day. So like, the things that go away is like the pain, the shame, the guilt, the prison trips, you know, sometimes I'm driving down the street. Like, I left a gas station earlier, and there was a guy like aggressively doing scratch offs, and it brought me back to a time where I had bags of scratch offs, because I would just be out of my mind, and I would need more alcohol, and I would go get scratch offs, and I would leave. And like, I looked like that person I was looking at, and it was such a moment of like gratitude amidst all the chaos, you know? I'm trying to go back to school to be a neonatal nurse. And to prove why I messed up in school, I'm giving them all my mental health stuff. Like, here, take it all. And, you know, I have CPTSD, and I struggle with that a lot, I think. And especially now that I'm in a situation, I've always been alone. It's always just been me, the children, and I. And now I'm in a situation with someone who I would regard as like family, as like someone who like a relationship can be nurtured and is not there to hurt me. And there are small things that trigger me that I never knew were triggers until I'm now in a situation where I have to act as if I know how to have long-term relationships, which I don't. You know, the longest person I have known is my children. I don't have long-term friends. My longest relationship was like 5 years. People are generally out to hurt me. That was the kind of people that I attracted. And those were the type of people that I hung out with. And I hurt them and they hurt me. And so I have fucked up dreams all the time. I am a little more overprotective with the children, because at 13, my son is like, I want to go to movie night at school. At 13, I was like robbing liquor stores and like running from the police and, you know, getting chased down because I robbed the trap house. Like, so sometimes I look at him and I'm like, okay, maybe I did like a little bit good, but yeah, I think the PTSD is, we don't even recognize that sometimes the anxiety comes from like things that triggered us that we don't even understand triggered us, like a smell or And people with a lot less trauma than me, I think that is just as valid. Like, trauma is trauma, and I don't like the trauma fighting that people do. Like, oh, but my trauma's worse. No, you've reached the level of trauma tolerance that you could reach, and you are valid to be triggered. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have to invalidate it because you didn't, like, oh my God. But, yeah, I think it affects me, but I'm working through it. I'm in therapy, and, like, I do EMDR and lots of unfun stuff. Children are forgiving, and recovery is going to be the most selfish thing you ever do. And if you're doing it for your children, don't beat yourself up because you can't get sober for your children. Because when you're trying to get sober for your children, you'll just never get sober. And what my life looks like today is that my children are not afraid when I come home. They're not afraid when I leave that I won't come back. They can come to me to help them do homework and build things, and they know that they're going to get the same mom every day. And I can be someone they're proud of, and the only amends I can make to my children is living amends. And I just have to continue to stay sober, and anything you ever wanted will come to you if you stay sober. It may not be in the way you want it to come, and it may not come in the time you want it to come, but it will come. And it really is like a life that I could have never imagined. And it's a process. It is not always rainbows and sunshine. There are people that will piss you off, and there are things, but the hope that I could share is like, if I can get sober, you can get sober, which I hate that, but like literally 1 second at a time, 1 minute at a time, ask for help, let people help you, be open-minded. Know that your best fucking thinking got you exactly where you are. So we don't know shit. That was the biggest thing I had to learn when I got in, was like, I thought I was so self-aware, and I've studied so much religion, and I've done all the things. I didn't know shit. So now I pray to the moon and to the sky. And when the wind breezes a certain way, I feel like that's God talking to me. And that can be as simple as your God has to be, and it's gonna be okay.